Hi. So, civil and women's rights have always been an ongoing movement in our society, whether it's been whether it's 100 years ago and before up until today. But a time period I would like to specifically focus on would be the 1960s, specifically towards the later half, where Aretha Franklin, a musical artist, creative, witty, and outgoing, rose above her trials and tribulations in her past and was rising past the ranks in the industry and becoming something of her own. With her song called Respect, released in 1967, originally performed by Otis Redding in 1965, she popularized it with her own twist to it and her own message to it as well that differed and had a different tone than Redding's version. But before I really get into that, I kind of want to describe what she had to go through to get to that point. Her musical career started in the 1950s, and again, the later half. But I think a lot of her struggles that she went through in her early life, you just don't really, it's very admirable, because you wouldn't think somebody of her color in that time period would be expected to be successful to the extent that she was for as long as she was. And she started out losing her parents at a young age, or at least her mom. Her mom died when she was 10, and her father wasn't exactly the greatest role model. His marriage with Aretha's mom was never really all that great because of infidelities. However, he was a successful priest, and he mainly operated out of Detroit. And he had a lot of famous names like Martin Luther King come over to his church for his services. So he was definitely a well-respected man. And by the time Aretha was 12, he had finally taken on a position as the manager and had watched over her. But that was like her only real figure going in and out. She had a lot of family that would come and take care of the house when she was younger, because her dad was always out after her mom had passed. He wasn't around too often outside of his job and career. So Aretha had a lot of different role models coming in and out of the house growing up. On top of that, she also became a parent at a very young age. She had her first kid, I believe, at 13 years old, and she had 2 kids by the age of 17. She did not graduate high school. I believe she only finished her sophomore year. So the education wasn't all quite there either. But one thing that she did have going for her was her exceptional talent at singing and performing. She started her musical career also at a young age, and that was kind of what propelled her to be successful and meet the right people. She did have like her later legal issues, but they never really weighed her down all that much. She got her first album when she was 12 years old. It was titled "I Will Never Love a Man the Way I Love You," I believe. And then it kind of just took off from there. She had all sorts of different performances going on through the early 60s, but her true hit, I would say, didn't really come out until after she divorced her first husband. I believe his name was Ted White. And it's awkward because a lot of her music was it was based off the message being that she wanted to be treated fairly and loved the right way. But it's ironic because in her first marriage, she was never treated all that well. She was in a very toxic relationship herself, much like her parents. And so, given that mirrored that, it made her music a lot more profound, and it gave a lot more meaning to it, I think, and it made it a lot more relatable if you knew the behind-the-scenes factors to it. So she comes out with Respect at 1967, and the main meaning to that is she's willing to make sacrifices as long as she gets a little respect in return. And I think given that the time period of when that song came out, that was a very powerful message. And the cool thing about her song that's also related to the time period is it wasn't meant to be very political. It was more meant to entertain than take a political stance on something, so she never really had to worry about being attacked by that kind of crowd. But the political message was kind of however you received it, It didn't even have to be political, it's just a message of basic human rights and understanding, She understood that not everything was going to be perfect in that song, or when she was singing that song, and she knew that she had to make sacrifices for the greater good, but in return, she wanted a little respect, and I think that's very admirable, and it's a solid message to have. I don't think that you can really perceive it too poorly. It's pretty basic, and yeah,